We want to be able to get so good on acting on our commands. If we say we're going to do something, then we do it. Drive a car, then you obey the rules of driving. You stop at a stop sign. You go when the traffic light is green. You stay between the white lines, and you put your signal if you want to turn or whatever, right? Like, if you have a license and you drive a car, there's rules that we have to obey to drive our cars so that we can get to our destination on time or without crashing. And everybody who drives a car tends to obey those rules as well. Obviously, you know, we have our outliers, the people who drive over the speed limit, the people who just speed up at a yellow light rather than stopping. You know, there's rules to these, there's exceptions and there's outliers, but overall on a day-to-day basis we are all following this rule. We're all obeying the law, because we know that we are going to face consequences if you don't follow this rule. If you don't follow this law, you can get a ticket, you can have to go get your license revoked, you might have to go to driving school again to relearn all these rules, or relearn all this law. We are very good at obeying other people's rules, but when we set rules for ourselves, we forget one minor detail: the consequences. We don't face the consequences immediately if you don't follow your own rules. If you tell yourself, hey, I'm going to start eating better this week, and you don't do it, you know, you're not going to go to jail for it and you're not going to get a ticket for it. But if you were to do it, if you were to eat junk food almost every single day, then there's going to be a natural consequence of you gaining the weight and feeling disgusting. And then whether that's going to make you want to stop or just be like whatever, or buy the next size in your jeans, it's up to you whether or not those natural consequences actually feel like consequences. Or if you don't study, right? If you don't study and you flunk out of school, that's a natural consequence. You weren't studying, so therefore you weren't passing your tests, so therefore your grades reflected your actions. And then if you get bad enough grades, then you might end up having to flunk out of school. And are you going to get a good job? Are you going to be paid a lot in the future? I don't know. But that's a natural consequence that happens when you don't obey the rules of studying or eating good or money management. Money management is a big one, where if you blow your budget and you don't have enough money for rent, then you might get kicked out of your apartment, or you might lose your mortgage, or you might lose your house. The reason why we have these rules is so that we can feel less chaotic. Just imagine a world where we didn't have the laws that we do for driving, and everyone could just drive at whatever speed limit that they wanted to. They can drive on whichever lane that they wanted to. Just imagine how chaotic life would look like if we didn't have those rules and set and everyone kind of obeyed them. Would you feel okay to drive to your destination if you knew that the likelihood of you crashing would be at a high percentage? I don't think I would feel safe enough to drive knowing that there's people going 100 miles per hour and never stopping and not caring about how everyone else is, like how fast everyone else is going, or if they're gonna stop or not. That's kind of what happens in our own lives as well, where if you don't have any order, if you don't have any rules for yourself, then our lives tends to feel chaotic just as the same. Because if you don't have rules on, like, okay, I'm gonna make sure that I stay within my budget and I don't overspend, then I'm gonna be able to pay for my rent and I'll be able to stay here for another month. But if I were to just blow all my money and then be forced out of my apartment, and then I'll have to figure out what I have to do for my shelter, that's life of being in chaos. So we have to remember that obeying these rules have a reason. They're not just because we just feel like having rules. No, all of these rules have reasons, And it is to feel more in order in our life and not feel so chaotic. When we know what to expect and understand that there's order, we feel more we feel more at peace with ourselves. When we know what to expect and we know what our outcomes can be if we do the right thing. Now that we understand the definition of being disciplined, next we want to create the rules. So I've talked a lot about the rules and having to obey the law, right? But how do you create those rules? How do you create that law to know that what's good for you, right? And we also want to build consequences for these rules. So it's not just also consequences, because we don't want to just only focus on the negative if you weren't to do this. We also want to create rewards for ourselves. What are the positive things that could happen if you're actually doing everything correctly? So we want to build a world where there will be consequences if you don't accomplish this, because consequences are just a natural thing that happens in our lives. Bad things happen and good things happen. We want to create a world where it's both. Bad things can happen if you don't accomplish this, but there's also really great things that could happen if you do accomplish this. And we want to be able to focus on both sides of the spectrum, but also understand that sometimes we just need to do things just because they're what we have to do. We want to start with your goal, the thing that you want to accomplish in the next few months. So think of the thing that, I always say this, think of the thing that you would feel the absolute happiest if you were to look a year from now. Next year in February, 2027 February, if you were to look back at this year, what would be the one thing that you would feel so proud of yourself that you had started and you had progressed so much and got to where you want to be? What thing would you feel the absolute proudest of yourself? Is it being able to pay off all that debt? Is it acing all your tests? Is it building out your business? Is it gaining all these followers, all these viewers? What would be the one thing that if you were to look back on at this moment in time, you would thank yourself for starting today if you accomplished it? Then next, you're going to create 3 rules or commands that you're going to act on for that rule. Remember, these are things that you are going to act on. These are the disciplined rules. So you're going to create 3 rules that you are, the commands that you're going to act on. What are the 3 things that you're going to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? And then you're going to create 3 consequences that you're going to give yourself if you don't follow these rules. And alongside that, you're also going to create 3 rewards if you do follow these rules. For example, right? If I were to give you an example of how this would look like, let's say the goal is I want to pay off my 10K debt. So the first rule that I would give myself is to pay my bills first when I would get a deposit. So let's say it's a check from work. Instead of blowing that check or not knowing what to do with that check, the first thing I would do is just pay my bills first. And you would be surprised at how many people don't pay their bills first and would much rather spend their money and then see how much they have left and then make it up later. You're going to pay your bills first, and then whatever's left over, that is what you're going to budget with. The next thing, number 2, check your bank account 2 times a day so you can keep track of your budget. Number 3, make more meals at home and stop eating out. So you see that these rules or commands are very specific. They're not just, oh, we're going to budget, or we are going to buy groceries. That's not specific enough. We want to be able to make them so clear, just like stop. Red light means stop, green light means go. That's very clear and specific. You know exactly what you need to do at that specific color. If you just say, oh yeah, budget every month, okay, how does that look like? What does budgeting mean? Are you going to budget on a paper? Are you going to budget through an app? Are you going to budget, are you going to create your own system? What does budgeting mean? How much are you going to budget? So you want to create rules that are very specific. You see how at the DMV, we have a whole booklet on the rules and laws on what you need to do in order to drive. That is the same thing for us. But do you also notice how we're not always just checking that book? Once it becomes an automatic thing and you know what you need to do, you don't have to check that book every day. You don't have to check that book while you're driving. No, once you kind of know the laws of driving, you just drive and you just know what you need to do. But but the book is very specific. Tells you, it gives you pictures, like, you know what you need to do. So we want to create that for ourselves. We want to create very specific rules. But I say 3. We're not going to write a whole book about like what we need to do in order to pay off our debt. I want you to just create 3 things that you could start today, and things that you can build the habit over time. So that kind of gives us a little bit of structure, kind of gives us a little bit of order. I like to give myself a system where I list out my steps and guidelines, because it just makes it clear for me. And I know if it's clear enough, I know if it's specific enough, if I'm able to pass it on to someone else and they can replicate exactly what I do on a day-to-day basis, because I've written it down so specifically. That's when I know I've written a really good rule or a really good law, right? So once we have our rules and we know what we're going to do on a day-to-day basis, next we want to create these consequences, these natural consequences. We want to create consequences on what could happen if we don't follow these rules. What consequences will occur? So number 1 is giving yourself extra chores. Number 2, limiting screen time. Number 3, taking money out of your fun money and putting it more towards your debt. putting it towards your debt. Number 4, not being able to watch your favorite show for that night or whatever, right? You can create the consequences for yourselves. The consequence that I naturally give myself is that I don't get dessert, or I'm not allowed to watch TikTok until I'm done with whatever I need to do. Those are just consequences that I give myself to kind of motivate me a little bit, to that if I do want it, then I got to do this stuff first in order to get what I want. That's what I do. But like I said, this is only to keep us accountable for our actions. But if you want to spin it in more of a positive way and not just only think of all the negative things that could happen, you want to give yourself a reward as well of what could happen if you were to actually to follow all of these rules. So you're going to give yourself, number 1, you could give yourself more screen time. You can save extra money for yourself, or watch 2 episodes of your favorite show. This helps us understand what rules we need to take on, the consequences if we don't follow the rules, and the rewards that if we do follow these rules. So now that we understand that world, let's understand how we can manage our emotions, because it's easy to make the rules, but it's hard to implement them when you say things like, I'll just do it later. The one thing we all end up saying at some point, right? If you don't feel like doing something, you're just going to simply say, I'll just do it later. But doing it later has its own, again, natural consequences. You'll end up piling more work on for you to catch up on at a later time. And time is super valuable, and it is something you will never get back no matter how much money you have. You can't reverse the clock whatsoever. So time is so important, because you never know what tomorrow can bring. You may say, oh, I'll just do it later, and then later comes and you realize, holy crap, I have so much to do on top of yesterday work or the work that I had left myself earlier. So when we get stuff done today, you can create a world where you don't have to stress yourself out in the future. You have more order, you have more peace of mind, knowing that whatever you did the day before was done. You don't have to think of yesterday's problems as today's problems, when you were able to actually get through them. But how do you get through that? How do you get through that portion of I'll just do it later, when it's so easy to procrastinate nowadays? It's so easy to procrastinate. Everything's a distraction. Everything's kind of pulling you to want to procrastinate, wanting you to sit and just do nothing all day long. So being disciplined is learning how to manage the emotions of procrastinations. You have the urge to take care of it at a later time than right now. There is no problem with doing it right now, other than that something else is kind of compelling you to stay, other than something else keeping you occupied and content to to not remove yourself of that little comfort bubble. So managing your emotions is just simply being in charge of your mood. And how do you manage your emotions? By having boundaries with your mood. Having boundaries with yourself is setting a limit of the victimhood, of the sadness, the depression, the anxiety, or the anger. Telling yourself enough is enough, and learning to progress towards your goals rather than falling backwards. So we have to learn how to set a limit with ourselves. And you have to come to a point where the life you are currently living is not the life you want to stay at. There has to be a level where you just can't keep moving forward the way that you currently are. And that there has to be another way. You can't just keep wallowing in your own tears. We at some point have to come out from under the water and learn to push forward, and the only way to do that is to be just a little bit more tougher with ourselves, learning to say no more often, and having the strength to keep saying no to those things, and keep saying no to the things that are going to damage our progress. So learn how to manage your mood by just setting that limit and simply telling yourself no more often. We have gotten to a point now where everything is about self-care. Everything is about just validating your feelings. Everything is just about coddling that victimhood, that mentality of victimhood. We need to learn how to be just a tad bit more tougher with ourselves and just say, no, enough is enough. Like, I'm tired of this. This mindset is not getting me anywhere. It's not getting me any closer to where I need to be, because if it was, then I probably would have been there already, but it's not. That type of mindset doesn't get you very, very far. If anything, it doesn't do anything at all. It just keeps you in the same cycle. But once you start telling yourself no, we're not gonna go out and eat Carl's Jr. No, we're not gonna go out and spend all of our money. No, we're not going to go to Marshall's. No, we're not going to eat junk food. No, we're not going to text that person back. Once you start learning how to say no to yourself more often, you're going to see how much better life can become. If you guys have enjoyed this video so far, don't forget to subscribe and like, so I know to make more videos just like this one. So let's go ahead and get to the last portion of this video, which is number 3, how to stop making excuses and stay disciplined no matter what. So like the car example, when you don't make excuses as to why you can't stop at a red light, you just do it because you know if you don't do it, you might crash and you won't get to where you need/want to be in a timely manner. You know, getting to your destination is much more important than having fun by driving recklessly. You have to understand that getting to your destination, which is your goal, is much more important than having fun in the moment and just eating a bunch of junk food or just blowing all of your money. You have to understand that getting to your destination is the goal. Because just imagine you driving recklessly, you might end up crashing. Let's say you're trying to get to work. If you end up crashing and you don't get to work, and you don't go to work for a couple of weeks or days, what do you think is naturally going to happen? You might get fired, or you might get replaced by somebody else. And again, that's just living life chaotically. But if you follow the rules of driving, then you can get to work on a timely manner, and you can get home to your family, and you can not be stuck without a car for God knows how many weeks, because it's just in the mechanics. It's at the mechanics. So when you decide that you're just going to eat a bunch of junk food instead of losing all that weight, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to outgrow all of the clothes that you have, and you're not a toddler, you are an adult. You shouldn't be outgrowing your clothes. If you're outgrowing your clothes, then you're going to have to start buying bigger clothes. And then what's going to happen if you start buying bigger clothes? You're not going to feel good about yourself. You're going to feel more sluggish. You're not going to have the same energy like you used to. You might even feel embarrassed of the body that you do have because you've gained a few pounds. Or let's say you're blowing through your entire budget. All the money that you make from work, you're just blowing through it on random shit that you don't need whatsoever. And you don't have enough money to pay all your bills. Then what's going to happen? You're not going to have a place to live. All of your lights are going to get shut off. You're not going to have money for food. You might not be able to pay for your car insurance. Your car payment's probably going to get, your car is probably going to get repoed. There's so many consequences that happens when you decide to have fun rather than staying in order. And there's, again, rules as to why we do what we have to do. There's a reason why it works. Because you can live a much more happier life if you just act on command. If someone tells you in order to get 6-packs, eat more salads, then stop trying to live life recklessly and just act on those commands. But we get lost because our emotions get in the way of us. And we want to make the excuses that life is against us. When in reality, life can be for you if you just act on the commands, limit your, you create the boundaries for your emotions, and you just understand that these rules are for the better and not for the worse. That is what I want to leave you guys with at this current moment. So if you guys have enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and like, and don't forget to follow me on all my social media. I am at Trildy Silva. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye!